And welcome back to Talk Today. In case you're just tuning in, I'm Raymond Singh, filling in for Mr. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks. And we're very pleased to have in studio Mr. Kenneth Bryan, Georgetown MLA. How are you, sir? Happy Tuesday.
I'm good, Mr. Raymond. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm sorry, my brain is kind of all over the place. So much going on at one time. I want to say, firstly, before we get started, though, good afternoon to everybody who's listening via radio or watching via YouTube, because we are advanced now here at Radio Cayman. Eventually we're going to be on Facebook, I hope, at some stage.
You know, we're going to cover all the platforms.
All the platforms.
In some stage.
Instagram, everything, right?
We are getting there.
But yeah, so to all of those who are partaking with this conversation with us, I hope you're having a blessed day. Things are good. Obviously, quite busy politically.
Sure.
A lot on our plates as legislators right now. And I'm here today to speak about one that is imminent this coming Monday at the Legislative Assembly, which will be the government's proposed domestic partnership bill. This bill, or the elements that surround this bill, has been a very sensitive one and emotionally driven one for many decades. We've been dealing with this for a long time. And I think that for lack of better words, we're kind of at a crossroads now in respect to making a decision moving forward with this topic, particularly that of the rights of homosexuals in the Cayman Islands. So it is important, as a representative of the people of Georgetown Central, that I engage with them, get direction and input on how they feel about this particular topic, and share some of the realities of what we're facing in respect to our relationship with the UK and what our obligations are constitutionally and internationally. So what I want to focus on today is more of a in-depth view of how do we get to this place, and what do we do now, and what are the consequences of what we do or do not do in respect to this bill. But I hope to engage some listeners, and hopefully, particularly if it's my Georgetown Central voters, them, if they have any questions or concerns, that they can call in. Obviously, I represent everybody in the Cayman Islands, but primarily the good people of Georgetown Central in respect to registered voters. So that's the plan today, and hopefully we can have a good discussion, because communication is key and dialogue is key, particularly in doing this job. And we have some serious discussions to have this coming Monday at the Legislative Assembly, which is right around the corner.
Very close. It's less than a week away.
Yes.
Now, this issue has not been one that has been solely focused on Cayman. This has been a global scenario in the Western world for quite some time. We saw the legislation in the U.S. less than a decade ago.
Yes.
But as you mentioned, there is some history about how we got to this point now.
Yes.
So can you walk us through a bit about that history, just particular to Cayman?
Okay, well, as you know, in 1503, the Cayman Islands was founded.
You took us way back.
Yeah,
you didn't start 3 decades. You went 3 centuries.
Yes, we got to go that far back to understand how important this is, because it has a lot to do with our relationship with the UK.
Sure.
So in 1503, we were discovered by Christopher Columbus. Eventually, through the Treaty of Madrid, the Cayman Islands was acquired and controlled by the British. And since then, we've always been connected and controlled and governed and monitored through that relationship.
Sure.
Over time, obviously, we've gotten more administrative rights, more legal rights, and constitutional rights to govern ourselves. Back then, the UK and the Cayman Islands, both jurisdictions, had relationships in respect to homosexuality was an illegal act. Obviously, the United Kingdom has amended much of their legislation and depends on how you look at it, improve their legislation in respect to the rights of persons who have who are homosexual. Sure. and therefore have that lifestyle. In respect to the relationship of the Cayman Islands and the UK has always taken this approach of more a persuasive attitude to getting the overseas territories to be in line with their likings and what they do in their legislation, even though they could take the iron fist approach, because we're technically owned, and we're a territory of the United Kingdom. But the UK has taken that approach over tens and tens of years, as centuries now, that it's more of an encouraging role to say, listen, this is what we're doing here in the UK, and as overseas territories, we would like you to do the same, and we encourage you to do the same, until it gets to that point where, okay, you're not going to do it, we're going to have to do it for you.
Sure.
And it's an approach that I must say that after much research over the last 3 weeks, I have to say I respect. And I'm going to give you an example of that. Many people may be aware that there was an order in council done on the 13th day of December of 2000, where the United Kingdom ordered for a law we call a buggery law to be repealed, which then allowed for persons who were homosexual to have acts of their own in private, for that no longer to be illegal, because it was illegal before. Mm-hmm. Now, the UK changed their legislation from back in the 1960s, but it was not changed in the overseas territories until in 2000. We're talking about 35 years later. And this is how long it took before the UK say, okay, listen, we've been telling you, get yourself in line. Now we're going to do an order in council. And this is after different governments, conservatives, and left-wing, right-wing governments back and forth in the UK keep on, every time the administration changes, they will do different reports suggesting that the overseas territory should do this or should do that, until I think it was the 1996 administration or 97 administration in the UK, there was a white paper done, and basically in saying that, we're encouraging and persuading the overseas territories to do so in respect to decriminalizing homosexual acts in private. And if you don't do so, we're going to do so by order in council. Ultimately, the overseas territories didn't adhere to that, and an order in council was done. And therefore now what we once knew as buggery law is no longer existent in the Cayman Islands. So technically speaking, regardless of whether you appreciate or like or dislike homosexual acts, they're illegal in the Cayman Islands in the privacy of their homes, just like a heterosexual couple. Sure. In the privacy of their homes. And that's an example of what the kind of relationship is with the United Kingdom. And it's key and important that we recognize that in our Constitution and in our relationship, the United Kingdom always has the nuclear option. The relationship is one almost like a parent and a child to say, listen, I'll let you go as far as you need to go, learn your own ways and test the waters. But if I have to, I will step in and stop you here or force you to do X here. And I think that's where we're at now in respect to this topic about the rights of persons of same-sex relationships and our relationship with our obligations to the United Kingdom. Because as you know, the United Kingdom is party and signed to the European Convention on Human Rights. And as a result of that, by being an overseas territory of the United Kingdom, we're obligated to those same things. Now, you may also remember in 2009, we implemented a new constitution voted by a majority of the people of this country. Okay. And there was a lot of negotiations going on back in 2008 as to what our constitution would have looked like before we had that referendum. Now, throughout those negotiations, the UK team that was here talked with the negotiators of the Cayman Islands, which was all the legislators at that time, along with many non-profit organizations and the churches. And the Bill of Rights was introduced and discussed and negotiated in respect to that being a part of our new constitution. And in the Bill of Rights, this is where the protections of persons who are of any different thinking, when I say that, I mean like whether you're black, white, rich, poor, disabled, old, young, homosexual, heterosexual. This is where the non-discriminatory elements were implemented in our new constitution. Sure. So much of the discussions were going on back then, and topics about our Christian heritage, and how do you balance that with modernizing our constitution back then. And this is when the description or the definition, of marriage between a man and woman came to light in our Cayman's constitutional concept. because the negotiators, on behalf of the Cayman Islands, wanted to ensure our Christian principles. And I think what unfortunately transpired and which caused us to be here is that the Constitution back then, having the protection of marriage between a man and a woman, kind of conflicts with the Bill of Rights in itself. So this bill is a bill that presents a solution to how do you have a law that says marriage is between a man and a woman without discriminating against persons who are of the same sex in a relationship. Because when you're married, you get a certain set of privileges and rights that come along with it. So we have a constitution that doesn't quite mesh without some other sort of legislation that allows the principles of non-discrimination. And what we've seen over the last couple of years is the test of that through the courts, through the Grand Court with the Chief Justice's rulings. You know that the government challenged that and said you can't change the definition of between a man and a woman. But then it went to the Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal said, listen, no, the marriage is between a man and a woman, but that doesn't mean you don't have to have some sort of legislation that offer those particular rights. So now we're at this stage where...
Now it's before the Privy Council, is that correct?
No, it's not at the Privy Council yet, but it's on its way.
It's on its way.
And I think that without inside information, that we will be on its way even quicker, depending on what the outcome of this Monday's debate.
That actually might be a good place to pause just for a moment. Let's take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll venture past that point.
No problem.
Come back with more Talk Today right after this. And welcome back to Talk Today. In case you're just tuning in for our show, I'm Raymond Singh, filling in for Mr. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks. And we have in studio Georgetown Central MLA, Mr. Kenneth Bryan, here discussing the upcoming vote on the Domestic Partnership Bill. As always, we do welcome you to join our conversation. Simply dial 1-800-534-8255. A quick note again, since we are discussing a relatively emotive topic, and for some, a very controversial discussion regarding the Domestic Partnership Bill. We do not permit any form of abuse on our show, and we do encourage all of our callers, regardless of your personal views, to maintain a respectful line of communication. Mr. Kenneth, back to you.
So I was just outlining some of the history behind how we got to this point. I think I went to a break on the point that it went to the appeals court.
Correct.
And ultimately the appeal court came back saying that, yes, marriage is between a man and a woman, but you also have to address the human rights violations as in respect to our obligations to our relationship with the UK and therefore the European Convention on Human Rights. So, as you may have said here on the show or other shows before, we know the declaration by the Court of Appeal, which is to introduce legislation that is functionally equivalent to marriage as expeditiously as possible. And I think, unfortunately, I didn't bring the documents with me of what exactly was in the ruling, but you heard that the government is using this bill as their response to the Court of Appeal in respect to adhering to that declaration by the Court of Appeal. Now, we have to understand the seriousness of a Court of Appeal giving a declaration, because the Court of Appeal is the highest court within our jurisdiction itself. The next step is up to the Privy Council. And the Privy Council is the Queen's Council, and they will be the ones who will take it the next step further and make the final call on this. And many people are not sure exactly what will happen if it gets there, and there's much speculation as to some of the comments made by current governments, and I'll give you an example of that. So the 2017-2019 report done by the Foreign Affairs Committee made suggestions that the overseas territories, amongst other issues, should implement same-sex marriage immediately. And if they don't, that the UK government which is separate from the Foreign Affairs Committee. The Foreign Affairs Committee is a select committee of parliamentarians within the, I think, 600 and odd parliamentarians. So it's just a select committee talking about the foreign affairs elements of the UK jurisdiction. And one of the issues was to get the overseas territories in line with similar or exact legislation that they have in the UK. And their suggestion in that was that the overseas territories should be mandated to have same-sex marriages right away. The government responded to that committee's report by saying the long-standing relationship that we've always had with the overseas territories, like I was saying to you from back in 1503, was one of persuasion and suggestion and encouragement for overseas territories to understand their obligations of this relationship as an overseas territory and try to make the decision themselves. So they took the approach to say this matter of local law is a dissolved element of power to local legislators, and we're not going to intervene, and we respect the relationship that we have. So they've said that we will not get involved in local legislation.
Was there any reference made to the 2000 Order in Council?
I don't recall. In I really wish I bought my binder so I could refer to these things, but I don't recall them referring to the 2000 Order in Council.
So there was no perceived threat there of listening.
Yeah, well, I don't think it came off as a threat.
Okay.
But there was an encouragement within that letter as well to say persons should get themselves in line with their obligations as to the European Convention. So again, another persuasive element of saying, listen, we're encouraging overseas territories to get themselves in line with their obligations as an overseas territory. But the last sentence is said, which is where I think some of the confusion may have come up, was they said, we have no intention of having an order in council on this issue. Now, unfortunately, I believe that if it's taken out of context of the timing of that statement, that statement was made before we had a Court of Appeal declaration, which is a very high court in our jurisdiction. It's the highest court in our jurisdiction. And the theory now is, or the worry that some sides are saying is that if we don't adhere to that declaration by the Court of Appeals, when it goes to the UK, it will seem as a disregard for the local laws, because it's a part of our constitution, which is the highest law in our jurisdiction. So the Court of Appeal has deemed that these rights, based on the Bill of Rights, have been denied, but yet marriage is protected. You have to find some other way to offer those rights. And the government is presenting this bill as a way to respond to that declaration.
And now we're up to now. So this is now where we're at.
This is now where we're at. But some of the things that I found in my research over the last 3 weeks also is something we call contingent liability. The UK, and it has a lot to do with the relationship, again, I go back to the relationship with the UK and the Cayman Islands. To appreciate the fact that the UK does not take an iron fist approach with any changes that they have within their legislation, but more one of a persuasive approach to say, I think you should come along and change and factor it in, as long as it doesn't create factor relations along with mother country. And that, in some cases, that may take 50 years. For example, the UK, as I said before, the UK changed their approach to homosexual acts. In 1967, they didn't do an order in council until 2000, which is 33 years later. So this persuasive kind of approach, until you get to that final stage, takes years upon years. And I think what we're having now is yet again another attempt, but with inside pressures from persons locally who are challenging the system based on that constitution with the Bill of Rights in it, to say, listen, now you have to do this. Then it forces the hands of the Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal is now forcing the hands of the UK government to step in if we don't address the matter.
So with the 2000 Order in Council, was there something that provoked that decision in 2000? And that's a long delay, the 30 some odd years delay
Yeah.
between the UK implementing
Yeah.
their laws. Was there something that actually provoked the 2000?
Yes,
scenario?
there
This-
was something that provoked it. It was another report, and I think it was a white paper report.
Okay.
And in that report, it was bringing up the how do we move forward as an administration? How do we improve our relationships and our structures with the relationship with overseas territories and the UK? So how it came up was a re-examination of the relationships with the United Kingdom and the overseas territories. And then within that examination, they go, oh, by the way, they still haven't resolved this matter of homosexual acts. And that wasn't the only thing that was done in that Order in Council in 2000. Capital punishment was also withdrawn.
Okay.
So it was not only specific. It's not as if to say that the UK was honing in only on homosexuality. But many of the other things that were not compatible with the United Kingdom, now every couple of years you'll see another report with overseas territories trying to get them in line. Particularly in line with the UK obligations to international treaties, like the European Convention on Human Rights. And that's what I was trying to get to in respect to contingent liabilities, right? So before that statement that many people are holding their foundation on in respect to saying, the government has said that, they will not do an Order in Council at this time in respect to this matter, was before a contingent liability concern came up. And now the contingent liability concern is the fact that the Court of Appeals have said that the Cayman Islands are in violation of the human rights and that the UK, by way of being mother country, has a responsibility to address this. So from an international perspective now, you have a court now calling on the UK to either, if the local politicians don't do something about it, then you're obligated. So then the European Convention will then look at the UK and say, okay, you've been given the order, they're down there and they're not doing what they're supposed to do. If you don't take action as well, if they don't take action and then you don't take action, you're contingently liable for the violation of these rights. So why I say that, unfortunately, I think many people are falling on a false premise when the government said they have no intentions of an Order in Council is because that statement was made before the Court of Appeal.
Decision, correct.
So now the circumstances have changed. And I've in respect to doing my research about this topic and where we're at with things, I spoke with our local representative, His Excellency Governor Roper, to say, a lot of people are holding on to that, thinking that, the UK government has said they won't step in. And he says, without getting into too much conversation, because I try to keep our conversations private, but Kenneth, the circumstances have changed. We are now contingently liable because if the Cayman Islands government does not pass this bill on Monday, depending on how long the debate may take. It may take till Tuesday because it's going to be a lot of conversation and everybody's allowed 2 hours to speak. So it may not vote until Tuesday in my estimations. Because then the UK, if it's not addressed within a reasonable period of time, the European Convention and all those persons who were tied to that agreement can hold the UK government accountable because they don't have direct relationships with us. They have direct relationships with the UK, who is responsible for us. So I personally think, and I've come to the conclusion based on research of our constitutional obligations, based on past behavior of the United Kingdom in respect to their approach to the overseas territories, based on discussions with the governor, His Excellency, that I genuinely am of the view that if we do not pass this bill, that the UK government will enforce something similar or equivalent to that before it gets to a stage where they're contingently liable for any potential damages as a result.
I have to call you right
yes.
there, only because I'm contingently liable to Miss Susan Watson, and I'm getting the look for Miss Susan Watson right now. We've got to go to break. So on that note, we'll go back to Porch Talk Today right after this. And welcome back to Talk Today. I'm Raymond Singh, filling in for Mr. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks, and we are chatting with Georgetown Central MLA, Mr. Kenneth Bryan. Kenneth, mic's back to you.
Thank you so much, Raymond. As we were saying before the break, obviously this matter and this topic is a very complicated one, with a lot of history, a lot of legal obligations, and a lot of emotional attachments either way and sensitivity. So in my role as a representative for the people of Georgetown Central, I can't leave them out. This is not just your decision where, the MLAs make a decision as to which direction the road is going to go down, or this is a very sensitive cultural, religious rights. There's so many elements tied into this, and I think we can't leave the people out of this discussion. Personally, I am of the view that it should have went to the people of this country for a referendum to make a decision because of the sensitivities of it. Why the government chose not to do that? I guess they can answer that question when the debate comes up, because I'm certain that that topic will arise. But for the interest of today and the time that I have, I'm going to do the very next best thing I can do as a representative for the people of Georgetown Central. So I just got through recording a video. That's why I'm in my suit today at the Government Information Services, and I want to thank the team over there for allowing me to do so, which I'll be sending out to my constituents in short order as to my intention moving forward about this bill. So I'll just for clarity, because it's summarized so much better of what I wrote, that I'm just going to read it. Okay? It says, "Good day, Georgetown Central voters. As many of you know, the government has released a bill for public consultation entitled the Domestic Partnership Bill. It is due to be debated and voted on in our Legislative Assembly on Monday, the 27th of this month. As your representative and your voice in the Legislative Assembly, it is important that I consult and get directives from you, the good people of Georgetown Central. So it is my intention to hold a vote on this matter at the Constitutional Hall, better known as the Georgetown Town Hall, this coming Saturday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Your vote will be confidential and will be done in private, where no one will know what your views are. Your input and direction on this bill, by way of your vote, is vital to best represent you. The question will be simple, and it reads as follows. As a registered voter for the constituency of Georgetown Central, do you wish for your representative, Mr. Kenneth Bryan, to vote in favor of the government's proposed domestic partnership bill? Yes or no? But before you vote, it is important that I inform you of some facts and realities of this bill. Firstly, this bill is the government's proposed solution to the declaration made by the Cayman Islands Court of Appeal to implement a legal framework that is equivalent to marriage for persons in same-sex relationships. Secondly, after much examination of our constitutional obligations and discussions with the local UK representative, His Excellency the Governor, I am left with the view that if this bill is not passed, the UK will enforce similar or equivalent legislation based on our obligations to the European Convention on Human Rights. Lastly, if the people of the Cayman Islands are adamant about not having any legislation that recognizes relationships of same-sex couples, the only other recourse available is a call for independence. Now, it's imperative that I tell you that I do not support or believe that this topic warrants a call for independence. But as your representative, I'm obligated to let you know what your options are. And as your voice in the Legislative Assembly, it's paramount that I understand and know what your wish is on this important topic before our Honorable House. So again, I invite you to come and place your vote that will help advise me as to your position on the government's proposed domestic partnership bill. I look forward to seeing you this coming Saturday, the 25th of July, at the Constitutional Hall, better known as the Georgetown Town Hall, between the hours of 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Come and take part in your democracy. God bless and stay safe. Now, Mr. Raymond, I think that summarizes my concept of where we're at because of some of the history that is outlined to you before about our relationship with the UK, what our obligations are, our history here locally, and the like. I take the role that I play as a representative for the people of Georgetown Central very seriously. And I know that I probably brought up a very sensitive topic just now, the word independence.
That's a whole other show.
That's a whole other show altogether. But I am obligated to tell the people that I represent the realities of things. And the reality is, at this particular point, based on what I've seen, is that we don't have much options. Because I'm of the view that the UK will step in. Every indication that I've been given is that. And without speculation, I decided to speak to the governor. And he is the voice of the United Kingdom here in the Cayman Islands. And he hasn't disagreed with that position. Matter of fact, he doubled down on it. So I think that regardless of what the ultimate vote may be in the Legislative Assembly, I want us to be fully informed of all the facts available when making that decision. Because where we're at right now is at a crossroads. And a crossroads is when a crucial decision has to be made that will have far-reaching consequences. And that's where we're at. But unfortunately, some of the discussions that I'm hearing, a lot of the facts of the realities of what we're facing in the country are being left out. Because, like I said in my first debate when this topic came out, we have to remember we are children living in our mother's house. And sometimes your mother may say, hey, I don't want you doing that. Or, hey, I need you to do this. And the only other way not to obey to your mother's house is find your own place to stay. And I know that that's a bit of a tight topic.
It is.
But probably a good time to go to a break.
That's a very good time to go to a break. On that note, we'll be back with more talk today right after our 1 p.m. headline news. And welcome back to Talk Today. I'm Raymond Singh filling in for Mr. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks. And we have in studio, in case you're just joining us, Georgetown Central MLA, Mr. Kenneth Bryan. Kenneth, we've been discussing the upcoming vote on the domestic partnership bill. Walk us through what is coming up this weekend on your behalf and for the people of Georgetown Central.
Yes. So ultimately, I am holding an opportunity for my constituents to come and make a vote on whether they want me to support this bill or not. Just like how you would do in an election. So at the town hall, what we'll have is when you come into the front doors, we'll have my team there. It's probably going to be 3 to 4 people. And no more than that, because we definitely don't want anybody in that building, more than 10 people at any one time, because of the restrictions of COVID-19.
Which is still around.
Which we are technically allowed 50 people, but we want to keep it as limited as possible. So you come in and you say, I am John Blow and I live at X Street so-and-so, and I see your ID. We'll have a master list of all registered voters in Georgetown Central. You come in, say, I'm John Blow, and my team will find you on the list. Okay, Mr. John Blow. And then you'll have a sheet of paper with the question on it. And as I read before, the question will say, as a registered voter for the constituency of Georgetown Central, do you wish for your representative, Mr. Kenneth Bryan, to vote in favor of the government's proposed domestic partnership bill? And now at the bottom, we'll have a little small box where it says yes, and a little small box where it says no. So you just mark, you can tick inside of it like a check, or you can put an X. Just have a clear marking of where you want it to be. You will take that, you fold it, just like how you would do in an election, you fold it, and then you walk over to the box, central box, which has to be seen by my team, and you drop it in. Just for security purposes, just to make sure that nobody's printing some funny ones and bringing it down, these ballots, what we call them. I don't want to use the word ballot because I don't want people to think this is a general election, but for this voting purpose, we will have our sheets where it have the question and the place where we tick our X in yes or no, and we will have my stamp from my office there at the table. So when we give it to you, we'll stamp it so nobody else can have, we can't see there's any duplicates in the box or what have you. And after you've done that, you just walk out through the side door and you walk back out. So it will take you about 2 to 3 minutes max to do it. and I hope people take the time out on this Saturday just to come on down and give me an indication, because it's important that I know how the people feel about this matter, and that they fully understand the repercussions of whatever that decision may be.
For our listeners' sake, walk us through those three potential consequences of the vote on Monday.
Well, again, this is my interpretation, and nobody knows.
Correct.
Nobody can call, unless we can call Boris Johnson up and say, "Hey, Boris, what's going to happen if we don't pass this bill?"
Have you tried doing that?
Firstly, if we pass the bill, then it's pretty straightforward, because we have met the criteria declared by the Court of Appeal to address the violation or the discriminatory concerns that the challengers, the Cayman challengers, have stated. So there's no question as to what happens moving forward. It's passed, and that's the end of it.
And everything is massaged out. There's no more legal actions.
I can't say to you what the correspondence of the challenge before the court will do, whether they go, okay, no, we want to go to Privy Council because we want same-sex marriage. I don't think so. All the indications from the two challengers have always been, listen, we just want the same rights as a person who is allowed to be married.
Sure.
I don't know if their position has changed. They have the right under law to carry the challenge as far as they do. I would hope that if the bill is passed, that they would, for the comfort of unity and everybody getting along, leave it there. That would be my wish. But again, it's their right to do so. If we don't pass the bill, then the next stage is, depending on what the respondents want to do, whether I think the process is now on the way to the Privy Council. I heard some talk about potentially in the early part of next year. I can't confirm that. But I'm not privy to what their legal team is doing. I think the government may have more of a better understanding of that. Sure. But if it goes to the Privy Council will decide on it. I must say this, one of the concerns that have been said, and is shared by the governor in our talks, is that there's a potential chance that if it gets that far to the Privy Council, we may not have a bill called the Domestic Partnership Bill. The Privy Council also has the authority, if they see in favor, to say, okay, we're going to order the Cayman Islands to actually have legislation equivalent to that in the UK, which is same-sex marriage, period. So this decision is going to have some consequences either way. I mean, if we pass it, there's still a large amount of people in our society who are Christian faith believers, and I protect that right all day, every day, because the Bill of Rights not only protects persons who are homosexual, but it also protects Christians. But one of the things I think that I would like people to focus on is that this bill could potentially, if you look at it the right way, can also protect the Christian position, which is marriage is between a man and a woman.
Which is what it does.
Which is this? What you will have is technically two different bills, two different pieces of legislation. For those who are of the Christian faith, can feel that, okay, this is my piece of legislation that is respected to what my Christian faith may be, while at the same time we have a different piece of legislation that offer the rights to those persons who were obligated to by our European Convention and our Bill of Rights in our Constitution will also get the same rights. Because one of the things that is important, Raymond, and I have to leave with this, is that I don't want, after this debate is finished, that we come out more divided than we are now. This is a time when we need to unify more than divide, because we're facing much adversities. There's a lot of Caymanians who are unemployed. We need to be able to get people together, not divide them anymore. And if there's an attitude of respect for one another, regardless of your views, listen, you could be atheist. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really affect my belief system.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? I am a Christian. This is my faith. As long as your belief doesn't affect or impede on my belief. Like, say, for instance, if this law said Christians couldn't serve in church anymore, then I definitely wouldn't be supporting it. What this law is basically saying, we're creating a separate piece of legislation that allows the rights of those who may act in what many Christians believe to be not right with the Christian faith. But it doesn't stop them from being Christian. So that's where I want us to think about it, because I don't want us to be divided after this vote is taken, because this topic has been an emotive topic for hundreds of years, and it's divided a lot of societies. And I don't want anything to divide us any more than what we are. We need to be pulling together, and I think between now and the vote, hopefully the country will talk about this enough, and that we can find a solution to what is before us. But most importantly, it's not about how I feel about it. It's about how my voters that I represent feel about it. I'm not a politician. I'm a representative. I'm like a lawyer when you go into court and you say, listen, I want to plead not guilty. Regardless if you're guilty or not, he's going to go inside and say, my defendant says he's not guilty. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to act on their behalf. So I want to hear what they have to say in respect to this matter. And I hope that they do so this coming Saturday at 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. I and my team will be at the Georgetown Town Hall, now named the Constitutional Hall, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. You can come in. You can give your vote in secrecy. It's going to be really quick. The answer is quite simple. Do you want your representative to support this bill or not? Yes or no. And then you can go back on to your Saturday shopping. All right?
So a quick question then,
yes,
just to make sure we avoid any confusion whatsoever.
Yeah.
This is something that you're coordinating through your Georgetown Central office. This is not an election office.
This is not an elections office. This is solely for the voters of Georgetown Central. It's not for all of Georgetown. It's only for the voters of Georgetown Central. It's for me to meet my obligations as a representative. I honestly would like a national vote on this, a referendum, but the government hasn't chosen to do that. And I don't have much time to argue and debate with the government as to why they didn't do that. By then, the bill is before the House. Sure. So I'm going to do what I have to do now to give the opportunity to those who I represent to give me directives as how they want me to handle this matter. But as long as they understand all the facts involved and what the ramifications is of that vote, then I know that I can be clear of what my position is, and that my people understood exactly what they meant when they voted yes or they voted no.
All right, and so the vote is again next Monday, potentially Tuesday, depending on how many MLAs exercise their 2-hour talk times on this one.
Yes,
I'm correct. Sure a lot will take advantage of the opportunity to
yes,
utilize that 2 hours.
Yes, if I can just quickly, I know we're going to close up now. I want to encourage persons who are listening right now who are Georgetown Central voters. Think about anybody else that you know is a Georgetown Central voter. Ask them, please, put aside just 5 to 10 minutes of your time to come down to the town hall to give me your directive. Great. Please, it's important, it's vital to the key component of me representing your voice. Okay. And this is a serious matter. It's not one that I think you should leave only in my hands. Now, I'll contribute to the thinking behind it in respect to the outcome of the results. But I think I would prefer you come down and give me an idea. If people don't come, then you leave the whole sole decision to me. So I want us to bear that in mind. Tell everybody you know in your neighborhood, listen, let's go down there, tell our representative how we feel about this by a simple X, yes or no, in respect to a box. And it's going to take you 3 minutes max. It doesn't take a lot of time from you. So tell your friends, tell your family, and this is specifically only for Georgetown Central registered voters. And it's this coming Saturday at the Georgetown Town Hall, which is now called the Constitutional Hall, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So I look forward to seeing all the registered voters of Georgetown Central come and take part in your democracy.
And you'll be sharing the video you shot with GIS on your Facebook page.
Yes, I will be sharing it. There will be a strong media campaign starting tomorrow, letting everybody know what's going on.
Fair enough. Mr. Kenneth, thank you so much for coming in, and all the best with Monday's very historic vote.
Thank you very much, Raymond. It was a pleasure to be here. God bless.
Thank you, sir.